Mark, have you noticed how long it takes to actually go live?
We're going live. We're live right now.
But I mean, usually there's like a delay of a few seconds.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's caching. It's caching.
Yeah.
Speaking of cashing in, no, just kidding. Welcome.
There's money involved? No.
Not here with us. No, I every time I play an episode, I have to pay someone. But welcome to the spoiler room, everyone. Yes, it is our last 4 on the floor episode for the month. We're putting a bookend, a final chapter into the 4 on the floor special series with Friday the 13th part 4, the final chapter. And yes, I have a wonderful group of individuals here tonight, some crew members returning to talk about this very interesting installment into the Friday the 13th franchise. He is back with us once again, none other than Mr. Michael. I hope I get it. Is it Veers or Vyers?
It's Vyers, yeah.
Vyers. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it sounds like Myers, but with a V.
I forget my kids' names sometimes, so I apologize. But Michael,
that's why you just call them Honorable Son 1 and 2. That way,
that's right. It's a lot easier for me to remember than their actual names. How you doing tonight, sir?
I'm doing really well. Yeah, it's
great,
been a good night.
Good to have you. And back with us once again, my right-hand man. We missed him for our Nightmare on Elm Street 4 episode, but we've got him back once again. It's Mr. Ian Simmons. Hello, Ian. How are you?
I'm doing well, and that was a weird week. It feels like it was 2 months ago, but it was only 7 days ago. But I did pop into the chat for a bit. That was fun.
Yeah, I appreciate that quite a bit. I know you were on headed to parts unknown. So, yes, 4 on the floor. We were exploring the 4th episode in horror franchises, and yeah, we've got an interesting one here. So, Michael, give us a synopsis of Friday the 13th Part 4.
Why is it always me? Okay, so Friday the 13th Part 4 takes place literally moments after Friday the 13th Part 3 ends. Jason is presumably dead. Police are cleaning up the campground. Wake of bodies are just strewn everywhere. Jason's taken to the morgue. Once again, they think he's dead. They think they finally caught the immortal Crystal Lake Killer, whatever the fuck the newspapers call him. Turns out he's not dead. And he comes back with a vengeance and more spry and ready to inflict pain than ever. And while he's escaping, a newly divorced mother and her 2 kids are living at their lake house. I get the feeling that they've been there for a while based on how, lived in it feels, or maybe this is like a lake, like a rental, like a property that they, summer house or something. Well, they are trying to restart their lives out in the middle of the woods while a group of unruly teenagers comes and spends I believe just probably a weekend with them to party and drink. Well, all of this coincides with Jason coming back to his I almost said ancestral home, to his to his home in the middle of the woods. He gets sidetracked. I'm gonna fuck some teenagers while I'm here, and that's Friday the 13th Part 4. Pretty much, the plot for every Friday the 13th is the same. However, this movie does have some interesting notes, as it is the first movie to introduce the character of Tommy Jarvis, who is the pretty much only reoccurring character other than Jason and the spirit of his mother. And they kind of have their own history together. So yeah, it's I think it kind of kicks off the only true through story that Friday the 13th has, and even that's kind of loose, but yeah.
It is. I mean, it's at least it draws the dots, and like you said, it takes place literally right after the events of number 3, which I thought was an interesting approach, because you don't always see. Usually, when you see that part of it in a horror film, you're already panning away or crane shotting up and rolling the credits as the ambulance and everything is coming up. So you don't actually get to see people spend time with the victims that you had seen occur throughout the through the film. So I thought that was interesting, them playing it. And yeah, Jason does look spry. He looks a little thinner. I think he lost a little weight, while on the gurney.
Plus,
Ian, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, continue. No, I was just going to give factoids. No, let's go to Ian first.
Oh, I was just going to
hear some factoids.
You want to hear factoids? Let's hear factoids.
No, I was going to say that Ted White plays Jason in this film. He is a seasoned stuntman. He had been a stuntman for John Wayne a couple of times. Actually, I met him at a convention, and he was telling me John Wayne stories. But he didn't want to do this film originally. Eventually was talked into it and thought, what can I bring to it? And he said he rented a couple of the Jason movies and just hated the way that how blocky all the previous Jason moved. So even though he's older than any other actor who'd played Jason up to this point, he's like, I'm gonna bring some physicality to this, and I think it shows. Which everyone loves Kane Hodder, but I think he's a little overrated. This is my favorite Jason.
Wow, your favorite Jason? Nice. No, you are right. He moves a bit differently. He moves a little more slick. He's not just the lumbering,
he's like
human lumberjack,
like a feral animal.
Yeah, he's actually kind of far more predatory, it feels like, in this, rather than running across, them. He actually seeks them out. He's a hunter of sorts. Yeah, I can see where he would be your favorite Jason. It's definitely a different one. What about you, Ian? What do you feel, your initial feeling with Friday the 13th for?
It's one of my favorites. I think it's up there on a lot of people's Friday lists. It's also one of the first ones that I remember watching it with my parents when I was like 8 or 9 years old. When it first came on cable, I begged them to let me watch it, and so we all watched it during like family dinner. And I think we made it through.
So wholesome.
Yeah, we made it through the nurse. Not the nurse, the hitchhiker with the banana and the knife to the neck.
Oh, then you didn't make it far at all.
No, I jumped under the blankets because I was saying we were eating downstairs in the basement with the TV dinner trays because we were a family of the 80s, but I had a whole bunch of blankets and I was watching it like through the little hole in the blankets because I was so scared, even with mom and dad sitting right next to me. But yeah, it's cool. It's really a strange movie because on the one hand, the screenwriter tried to draw, like, kind of make a continuity with the previous films, but it's so messed up that it doesn't make any sense. Rob, who's the survivalist that we meet, in the middle of the picture, or I guess a little earlier in the middle of the picture, he's out there hunting Jason in the woods because Jason killed his sister Sandra years ago. That makes no sense because, as you mentioned, Friday the 13th, the final chapter, opens at the same night as they're, rolling away the bodies from part 3. Part 3 opens the night after part 2, in which Sandra was killed. So Rob has been out on this mission of vengeance for years for something that happened literally 3 days ago.
Yes. He's hunting bears. What are you talking about?
He's hunting bears. What are you talking about? He's the red herring. What do you call it? That's his real name, is red herring. They tried for a little while it's Jason out there, but they played for a little while that he might be a killer too, or at least the way they kind of cut it, they're
scenes. Also they're also pointing fingers at the mom too a little bit.
Yeah, they point the fingers at the mom a bit as well. So it's an interesting thing, with his story. Well, they're trying, though. They're trying to give this reason why we have to have a good looking guy who's not a college asshole.
He's a fresh out of college asshole.
Fresh out of college, for our very pure lead female to fall for. That's why he's there. She can't go for the college guys that are all drunk and horny. She goes for machete wielding bear hunter
who can start a car with a knife.
Which I love, because if it wasn't for him, her brother Corey Feldman would have started it. This kid is like, what? He's supposed to be like, what, 8? Mm-hmm. And he's making Tom Savini's quality masks in his freaking upstairs woods.
Got a mold maker and everything. Mark, what at one point, even as a kid, that I realized this movie is going to kick ass. The fact that, like, when the Friday the 13th title comes up, it then fucking blows up.
I know, right?
Just like, I'm in.
Well, considering Friday the 13th Part 3 came out during the 3D craze, so it wasn't 3D, this title sequence almost leads you to believe they wanted to make this in 3D too, in some ways.
Well, I gotta say, speaking of that title sequence, this was, I think this was the first Friday the 13th that I watched.
Sure.
So the pre-credits montage, I think was, very well done, because it opens with, Friday the 13th part 2. I don't want to scare anyone, but I'm gonna give it to you straight about Jason. The campfire scene. When I was 8 or 9 years old or whatever, I thought that was original to this movie. I didn't realize that was something from the other film. So
it's a pretty great, like, previously on.
Yeah, and it is, and it it leads you right up to the climax of part 3, and then you got the exploding hockey mask, and then you're right into the business. It feels like what Paramount had intended it to be, which was the last Jason movie, because Paramount has been famously embarrassed of this franchise, even though it made them hundreds of millions of dollars.
They made money hand over fist on this thing because they were cheap to make.
Right. But it's like, well, we got Top Gun, and then we also have Jason Lives in the same year. Great.
Well, they were ahead of it. Is clearly the better film out of the two.
Yes. Well, I mean, they were already ahead of the curve of Nightmare on Elm Street, because Nightmare on Elm Street didn't have your exploitation elements till part 3. And by then, Friday the 13th had, wide release exploitation horror all over the place, which is definitely in this one. I mean, wow, they don't. I mean, why did they even have clothing in the budget? Really,
so they could take it off, Mark.
I'm sorry. Yeah.
It's a strip tease. You gotta tease them.
It's tease. Yes, that's right. So yeah, I made some notes here, because one thing I love, this opening is really interesting. It really is, because
are we talking of like the previously on opening?
Sorry, no, after the credits. Because the montage, no, I agree with you, Ian, is great.
So we're talking when it picks up after 3, that it's honestly, I will say, like, that, and even like the right afterwards at the hospital is some of the best filmmaking in the entire franchise.
Yeah, that's where I was going with this, is that whole opening sequence, even with the credits in the middle, all the way up till the nurse buys it, is really solid. I mean, that pulls you right into this film. You get a little bit of humor with the mortician guy, with the coroner, I mean, and then you get your brutal kills, some of the most brutal kills I've seen for a little while, from a horror film, from Jason.
And then some great suspense too. So, like, we all know that Jason's alive, because most we wouldn't be watching this movie, but it became like a question of like, when's it going to happen? So they're like, like I said, I love all that stuff with the police cars and the ambulances and everything, because it just makes this feel like it's got a huge budget. And that final crane shot as it pulls up and all the cars leave, and we're just stuck with the darkness of Crystal Lake for like a solid 3 beats. It's fun, and then just bam, right into the hospital. And we just keep waiting. Okay, when's Jason gonna wake up? When's Jason gonna wake up? And then it just keeps holding us along. And then that just one of my favorite shots of all time for any movie is when they're putting them away in the cooler. You see that just a little bit of breath come up. Like, it just shows so much restraint for a franchise that's not known for restraint, and it just keeps pulling us along. And even just in little ways, like we barely get to know her, but I grew to really like that nurse character. She just seemed to have a whole lot going on for her, and just her pure fucking excitement when their hospital's mentioned. She's like, "Yay!" It's like, oh man, I don't want her to die. She seems like a good person. So, like, just like the way that it really drew that out, like it very much felt like Joe Zito's being like, okay, I know what this movie has to become. And what I have to do, and we know he can do that because he made the Prowler, but like he was like, how long can I delay that expectation and just play with suspense in a franchise that's not known for it? And throughout the movie, I think he does a great job with suspense and delaying expectation. But that intro, that beginning, like, I'm rambling, I'm sorry, but like I often think about when it comes to film criticism, I often think about something I read from Roger Ebert one time, where he says, when you have to review a film, you have to take into consideration, is it, a 5-star movie? Is it a 5-star movie of all movies ever made? Or is it, a 5-star Western? Is it a 5-star slasher film? this film is in my opinion like a 5-star slasher film because it does things that few other slasher films can do as well as this movie can.
Very well said. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
that was a tangent. But
it's a solid film overall, especially actually out of this franchise, because from here you get the really weird, number 5, and then we get into like zombie Jason and
which
all
I also
that
think is
fun.
great, but for very different reasons.
For very different
Mhm.
reasons than this. Yes. Ian, would you agree that there's a lot of suspense in this for a slasher?
Yeah, I mean that the thing about the that opening that we're talking about is, it's one of the rare moments. I mean, you get a little bit of that in part 3 where Jason kills the couple in the convenience store, the whatever, the the market. The guy gets the cleaver through the chest, and the lady gets the needle through the back of the head. But this is one of the rare times when you see Jason kind of in the world of adults, in the world of safety, because you've got ambulance drivers and cops, and they're all over the place. They're cleaning up. You've got the orderly who is, that whole thing where she's coming to take the body out of the barn, and the hand falls out, and it's a dead hand, and it's a jump scare and everything, but she's kind of freaked out. You're right, Michael. There is that question of like, when is Jason coming back? But it's also the question of, could Jason come back? Because I mean, he could take on that entire police force and the hospital and everything. We see him do that in later installments, but he's kind of waiting. It's like I just like that predatory aspect. I just want to go and stalk a couple of people at a time, or one person at a time.
And you make a great point. He's in the world of safety, as you put it. Like, it's very rare that we see Jason in other people's elements, because normally it's people coming to Jason or coming to his territory somewhere around that lake. It's very rare that you get to see him in someone else's world. And it's also interesting too that his whole goal is to get back to Crystal Lake. It's honestly, Mark, I know how much you absolutely love Halloween Kills. If you were to just make that movie again and put Jason in it, it'd be probably a killer Friday the 13th film. Pun intended. Because like a lot of the motivation they're giving Michael Myers in there is Jason's motivation. And if Jason would have woke up and just taken on the entire paramedic team, that's the beginning of Halloween Kills. But
yeah.
no, but like,
yeah.
And I think that's probably some of the stuff I'm gravitating towards as well. Because like, I'm trying to think, like, other than Jason going to Manhattan and being on that boat and going to space, he's at Crystal Lake. The only other time he's not is Jason goes to hell. It's not really Jason, so it doesn't really count. So it's like it's rare that they pull him away from his home and we get to see him interact with the world.
Well, and also the world that he's interacting with. I didn't, in fairness, I didn't rewatch the movie for this show, but I did listen to the audio commentary, which I've listened to like a dozen times, with Joe Zito and I think the screenwriter and one other person, possibly the editor. But they were kind of filling in these little tidbits. At the hospital, we kind of rushed past this waiting room, the family. And I think it was scripted but never shot, but there was supposed to be a bit more business in there because those were the parents of one of the victims from part 3. I guess they had just been told. And in that, earlier on, when we see the people being carted out on stretchers and stuff, younger me and even older me to a certain extent, I'm looking at those stretchers to see if I can figure which of those bodies from part 3 is coming out. Is it the guy who got cut in half, or one of the bikers from the barn, or something like that? But they're not just showing all of the meat and the carnage. They're treating it much like an adult crime scene. It's all white sheets and ambulances and being very clean.
It's the aftermath we never get to see in a slasher film.
Right.
Yeah.
The cleanup.
Yeah, because I always had that thought when I watch slasher films is, my brain always goes that when, the credits rolls, especially for like the 80s and late 70s types films where you get like the film just ends. I always love that. Like, bad guy buys it or whatever, or cliffhanger, boom, end credits. You're just like, well, wait, what about? So I used to always piece together too, like, wow, what body bags, and who's got to clean that up? And thinking about Nightmare on Elm Street, God, the paramedics guys walk into that, after Johnny Depp gets flushed onto the ceiling, they got to go in and go, oh,
Gotta
crap.
squeegee the walls.
Squeegee the wall.
I loved and that's a different movie we're talking about, but the just the detail of the blood stain seeping through, the blood dripping into the bucket from the upstairs. Yikes.
Yeah, so we get that here, so that gives you another perspective. And yeah, I think you're right on this. Even though we have the college kids, showing up and getting killed, on the whole, this feels like a more mature Jason. This feels like an adult Jason in many ways too. Not just the lumbering kid in a big body. I feel like this Jason, even though it's like only 3 or 4 days, but he's more experienced. He just comes off more serious, I think, in a little more mature in this.
He's probably pissed off at this point. Like,
well,
like,
he's
fuck,
also.
I was living alone, and then you guys came and fucked my shit up.
He's also kind of inconsistent, which I appreciate in some ways, and other ways I don't quite. Like, he does some really savage kills. I mean, something that I didn't notice until I'd watched this movie like a dozen times was when he's stabbing the hitchhiker through the back of the neck with she's eating the banana and the blade comes through her neck. You can actually hear beyond like the shock music, you can hear like the grunt, like he's like driving it into her neck, like Jesus Christ. But then later, when he kills Rob the survivalist in the basement, he takes his time with him. The Crispin Glover kill, it's just like a cleaver to the face and he's done. This guy, he's like chopping into little pieces to the point where we spend like 2 minutes of the Tommy's sister, whatever her name is, like escaping and running up, from the basement, and you can still hear from downstairs, he's killing me, I'm still dying. But then later, when Jason is attacking her before Tommy comes to save the day, he's like struggling with her on the floor, like almost strangling her and holding her down. Like, what are you doing? You could just go like that and, she'd be dead. So I'm not sure exactly. Maybe he was tired.
Yeah, it's like a video game, and his little like bar had been depleted, so he's waiting for it to load up again.
His stamina bar. His stamina bar ran out. He used it all on the previous kills. And so, and then he got knocked out as well. So, that stamina bar, it takes a while to build back up if you don't
That's
have
how he can do the specialty kills. He has to do a bunch of weak kills before we can get up to it.
Sure. Yeah.
And let me tell you, that button press for that is killer.
You mentioning the basement scene, though, is one of the scenes that stuck with me when I saw this movie as a kid. Like, while the hitchhiker's acting in that scene is not particularly great, like I guess the aware, because like normally, like you said, most people just kind of get a quick kill, like, oh no, shock, dead, whatever. Here's a moment where like the guy hasn't, has enough wherewithal to know like what's happening, and he can't do anything about it, and it's going to happen. It's a force of nature, and he unfortunately is not one of the lucky few to get a quick death, and it's always stuck with me. So much so to the point where like, I have an artist made a poster of that scene from the hitchhiker's perspective of Jason with the like the trowel, and I have it hanging up in the house just because it's one of the most effective scenes I've seen in a slasher film.
Is that for your guest bedroom for when people spend the weekend?
No, that's maybe I should put it in the guest bedroom. No, I don't have right outside the guest bedroom. I do have my signed Texas Chainsaw Massacre poster and Marge Simpson from Playboy.
Oh, well, there.
All right.
An actual like Marge Simpson centerfold that was in an official issue of Playboy, and I have it framed.
Yeah, I remember when they did that. Yeah.
Her turnoffs are meanies.
Meanies, yeah.
Meanies.
Let's also just take a moment and pause to imagine, garden trowel as a killing weapon. That just adds the brutality itself.
That's why it took so long.
I stole that. I put that in the movie I wrote that never got made just because I think it's so fucking brutal.
It is brutal. A lot of people think, you get the big machetes in that, and like, okay, I think it's more brutal when they take like a common instrument that's smaller that you're like, oh, you could kind of hurt yourself with. I don't know if you could actually kill. And they kill. He's going to town with him, and so that's why it takes a while. It's not even, not even like the 3-prong, garden the chopper or whatever it is. It's actually a trolley stabbing him with. So I think that just adds the extra level of brutality. But in general, Jason seems brutal. But he also played with this hunter, because let's not forget earlier, his gun gets like bent or whatever, or he has a gun in his tent, and Jason showed up and he hid from him for a minute. He's like, oh fuck. And he's like, I'm not ready yet. And then he goes over to his tent and like his shit's all messed up and his gun's destroyed. So it's like Jason was toying with this guy. He had it out for this guy. He's like, oh, you're gonna fucking shoot me? Okay, I'm gonna garden trowel your face.
You gave him a warning. He didn't listen.
He did.
It's funny. A bit of trivia I picked up from the commentary track is that they had initially planned for him to have all sorts of cool, like Jason hunting weaponry, like some high tech shit. But when Joe Zito got it from the prop department, he's like, "This looks terrible. I'm not filming this." So just like gave him a rifle and he gave him a machete.
I think the rifle and the machete works better than say like, I don't want to turn into like
flamethrower
and a grown up version of the movie Remote, where he's got like a little remote control car with a bomb on it or some shit.
No. And as we mentioned, we do have our college group of interesting individuals. Crispin Glover, holy crap, he's the dead fuck of the group. But he's not a dead fuck, according to one half of the twins that show up later.
Are those the Doublemint Twins?
No, they weren't. They were just twins. But
okay.
And they were British twins too.
Yeah, which was
I mean, not in the movie. I think they were putting on like a California or Jersey accent or whatever, wherever they were supposed to be. But yeah, they're Brits.
I mean, for your group, you had the chaste one, you have the horn dog, you have a couple of the couples, you have the guy who was just broke up. So I mean, they're all the tropes we had seen in the other Jason movies. But for some reason, I like this group a little bit more than say the other ones. They didn't feel quite as much as fodder, and maybe it's because we do spend more time than kind of expected than we do like with the other characters in previous ones, because usually just as we get to know them, they get killed. And here we do get a number of scenes where they aren't being fodder and killed. They're just being a group of individuals going skinny dipping so that Corey Feldman can eye some skin. And yeah, it's the 80s, folks.
Honestly, Lawrence Monison's character, like I just feel like it's just this. He feels like a sequel to The Last American Virgin. It feels like almost the exact same character.
Well, they came out within just a couple of years of each other.
Yeah,
right?
I think this is like the second or third. Yeah, this is the second movie Lawrence Monison had done.
Mm-hmm.
He had done an episode of Different Strokes before that.
Wow.
Yeah, his Last American Virgin, Different Strokes, this, Mask. It's a hell of a run.
That's also the 80s. That
sums up the 80s pretty much. But I mean, was there a character that you liked or just liked to dislike out of this group, Ian, of college kids?
It's hard to say. I mean, I generally liked all of them, but I can't really think of them as individual characters. Really, they're just kind of. I think as I watched this movie so young, I just think of them as kind of this pastiche of, victims. The older I get, this is probably because I've got kids, and I imagine them like growing up to become adults and stuff and go off to college. It strikes me as like just more sad and tragic, especially because there are some of them that it's the whole like slasher trope of like you do drugs and have sex and you get killed, but like. And I can't even think of the characters' names, but like the pretty boy and the virginal girl who end up kind of like falling for each other, and they take that shower together. The pretty boy guy, he's not a jerk. He seems like a nice dude, right? And so when he gets his face crushed into, his skull crushed in the shower, and then his new girlfriend discovers the body just like leaning over the shredded glass in the stall, and then she runs for her life and she's screaming, she gets an axe through the chest. It's like so savage and just mean-spirited that not that it takes away the coolness factor, it like heightens it in a way because it's cool and it's tragic and it's, you know, horribly bloody.
That's how I felt about, and actually, that's one thing I like about this film is that everyone kind of has different dimensions, even though they are playing these tropes. There's differentness about them. Like when you have the quote unquote the the loose girl of the two of them. You know, they have that whole conversation. It's like, well, you slept with everyone, and she goes, I actually haven't. You know, like that's just my reputation. And it's like, oh, she's got a little more. You know, she's because normally that character is just like bitchy and slutty and whatever, and that's what she's known for. Like here's a character who is something legitimately behind who she is and is just a victim of people's stories. But then I also love her boyfriend, who is kind of like, attracted to one of these two twins. But then when things start getting too close, he's like, I can't do this.
Yeah.
And he's like, I can't do this. I shouldn't be doing any of this. I want to go find her. And I was like, oh, that's not how this movie normally plays out. And I'm bummed out that what's going to happen to you next. It's like, yeah, that's how I felt about them too.
She gets that brutal kill through the floating boat too, though.
Yeah.
Jason, that's even though there's mostly shadow, I think it goes with what Ian says. The sound design in this film is just awesome because you get the crunch and you get her kind of like it. You can kind of see the tip that has come through her back through the boat, but it's the sound that helps sell the just shock value of that scene.
I don't know if this is on the previous releases, but Shout Factory put out a box set of the Fridays last year or 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was last year. Yeah.
And they've got like extended kill scenes, and watching that scene, like you hear it described on the audio commentary, like, oh yeah, this scene was much longer and much harder to watch. But then you actually find it on the disc and watch it, and it's true. Judy Aronson was the actress who did it, and her face looks kind of goofy in the cut up version because like her tongue's hanging out and her eyes are kind of bugged out. But when you see the full context of her death, it looks pretty real and it's kind of hard to watch. I always was bothered by the fact that Paul comes out to swim out to the lake and find her, and he sees her body. I think it's a nice deal of restraint that when he finds her body, it's like we're much further back. We don't really see anything except this, corpse laying in the raft. We don't see the big bloody reveal of blood and guts everywhere. I just wondered what the hell that raft was made of, because a giant fucking machete came up through it and stabbed the body, and it didn't like immediately collapse and fall into the water.
Dude, those rafts were tough, man.
Sure.
We had one similar to that. You could get a big hole in it and still, I mean, there'd be some water in it, but it'd still float. Jason was smart enough not to puncture the big tube around it. He punctured the floor, which is a separate bladder than the tube around it, because you always had to fill the tube and then fill the bottom separately. So,
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm talking about.
Hey, I believe it. I never once questioned it, even though now that you're mentioning, it's like, fuck, I don't know how I've never questioned it.
But here's something, one of you mentioned earlier on about Mrs. Jarvis being sort of a red herring. Imagine the movie we would have gotten, and it probably would not have led to 5 and 6, which I think would have been a crime because I love both of those for different reasons.
Same.
But imagine if what had happened was, instead of Mrs. Jarvis dying off screen, she had lived, and it's Jason versus her daughter, and Tommy at the end. And Jason fucking kills Tommy and sends mom into a rage, and she kills Jason. And at the end of the movie, in the hospital bed, daughter's all injured, mom comes and gives the hug, and then we get the wide-eyed psychopathic stare of the mom, kind of like bringing it all back full circle of the dead son and the vengeful mother.
Then Friday 5 could have been like Terminator 2, and we could have had like the Linda Hamilton version of this mom hunting Jason. Fuck, that would have been cool.
That would have been cool.
Or it could have been her becoming the next
Jason,
redo Pamela Voorhees redo.
Yeah.
Any one of those options would have been good. That's a good ending.
I like that. Yeah, that would have been slick too. Fan film. There you go. But we're sitting here talking about the dynamics and the tropes that you normally get. I think one of the things that makes this, and I keep coming back to, but they really stood out to me of this group of college kids, is that none of the females I felt were your typical, pardon the term, vacuous bimbo. You usually get at least one out of the group, like I Broke a Nail, who shouldn't be out in the country, but she's out there to be with her football boyfriend or whatever. That character. All of these characters, like you said, the one girl who had the reputation of being rather promiscuous, they're having that conversation. It's like, well, guys talk.
Michael made that point. Full credit.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sorry, Michael. My apologies. You're talking about that conversation, and they're just having that conversation. But the female characters, even the twins who show up, who you think have some nefarious plot to pull away the guys specifically, and one does, but the other one doesn't. But they all felt like they
you
at
got
least
the good looking of the two.
They all felt like competent kids, though. They didn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because you get that in slasher films a lot. You usually get at least one just completely guy or girl, just dumb character. Like
it's like the dude in Friday 6 who's like the super rocker dude who's like trying to teach them about like stacking stones and shit. That's that guy. He's completely fucking useless and has no reason being out there. But like you said, Mark, they all just feel like they know enough that they can figure out how to rough it for a couple days.
Yeah,
rough it as much as you can, considering they have a projector with dirty movies.
Which I love that. I love that segment. This just random, like they get into this romantic thing and they start getting, and all of a sudden the one guy goes, "Hey guys, guess what I found?" And they all gather in the living room with the projector, which they just happen to find, to go with the film reel to watch old stag films. And you get it's a fairly long sequence. I'm like, wow, this is actually kind of
honestly so I liked pretty much every character in this movie, and I loved them as an ensemble. The only character that I truly didn't like was Ted, Lawrence Monison's character, because he's just, I almost felt bad for how much he was teasing Crispin Glover, because I got the feeling that they were they're all friends, but I kind of got the feeling those two were closer, and it's probably the way that Crispin Glover played it, and I know they did a lot of ad-libbing. I think that line where Crispin Glover's like, he thinks this is a funny thing he's doing, it just really felt like it was affecting his character, and it bummed me out so much so that when Crispin Glover finally got lucky, I was like, fuck yeah, Crispin. And then when Teddy bought it, I'm like, well, you probably had that coming. You probably are a bully to everyone, and they just hang out with you probably because you can get weed or whatever.
Yeah, it very much does feel like that, because the dynamic switches from the beginning of the film to the end, because Teddy's like, he got the fake computer and everything. He's like, computer says you're a dead fuck, because Crispin Glover had, I guess, just broken up with his girlfriend.
And I do have to say, admittedly, I hate the term dead fuck. But
yeah, me too.
Continue the computer and everything.
Right, but that's the thing, is you kind of feel like Crispin Glover is this unlucky in love guy, and he's got this friend who's kind of macho and maybe has better luck with the girls, but then by the end of this you realize the guy's a complete loser.
Yep.
He doesn't think much of himself or the women he's trying to get with, and you get the idea that if he had gone upstairs with one of the twins, it probably wouldn't have lasted very long. But that said, he did have, his death was just, my God, like the kitchen knife through the back of the head, through the movie screen, and Lawrence Monison's reaction, it comes through and you see, it feels like a genuine reaction, like you might see if you witnessed someone getting stabbed through the back of the head. He doesn't just fall over; you actually kind of see him die. And again, it's one of those sounds you have to listen for if you've watched the movie like a million times. And you can listen over the shock music as he's sliding down that projector screen. You can kind of hear him go, yeah, it's brutal.
It is brutal. Everything is given, these deaths are given weight, which is, I think, what you both were saying, about the difference in slasher film formula with this one, is that a lot of the deaths are given a bit more weight. We linger a bit. It's not just, hey, gimmick, let's go. You make you feel like these victims are actually feeling something as they're getting killed. And I think that just adds to it. And you can hear it, by the way, also on the VHS. So there's
also a lot of style to the deaths as well. You have, the more subtle ones, like, the hitchhiker girl, as subtle as that is, but but then you also have the more orchestrated ones. You have the woman getting thrown, pulled through the window and falling on the car as it explodes. And then my all-time favorite, I believe it's in this one, the long tracking shot following the girl out to the rain, and then the camera stops following her, and then we see her die in the shadow with the lightning strike. It's like, that's just so masterfully directed.
Well, not only that,
you
go ahead.
Pull up on her, and then you're like moving past her, like, wait, what's going on here? And then you see the lightning strike and the silhouette of you see her get run through with the spear, and then a second later, the body gets flung into the house, like speared to the siding.
Mm-hmm.
It's
well,
really
not only
cool.
that, but what's also cool is that it goes back to the house, and then there's a few beats. And then her bloody body shows up, later. It's like not right away. So, it's just crafted well. I mean, I watching it, revisiting it again, I'm like, I'm really into this. It's a lot better than I even remember it, because I all honesty, I don't rewatch the Friday the 13th too much. Except for Jason X, because I love Jason X. I don't care. Don't judge me. I love Jason X.
No judgments.
It's my type of
judgment.
Film,
it's just not my favorite.
It's completely ridiculous. I know, but
Seven and Jason X get a lot of love, and they're just okay for me.
Yeah, and see, those were right up my alley, especially Jason X with the I love the liquid
I can't say
nitrogen.
anything. I have an unapologetic love for Jason Hits Manhattan. Or Jason Takes Manhattan. Like, I have an unapologetic love for it. So we all have our
Friday the 13th that everybody thinks, and you're like, yeah, I love that one. But this one, this has got some seriousness to it. It's got, and then we haven't even gotten to the whole thing with the divorced mom, with Corey Feldman's character Tommy and his sister Trish, played by Kimberly Beck. I like this dynamic too. These felt like people. He somehow makes you care about all the victims for once, which usually doesn't happen to a slasher. You usually care about the final girl and maybe the one geeky guy because you can relate to him. Well, I can. But everybody else, you're just like,
Shelley.
Yeah. Everybody else, you're just like, okay, how are they going to get killed? And in this one, I didn't want to see anybody die. This group of people just felt like actual people. And seeing Tommy just go, you think he's going nuts right away doing the hair trimming scene, because we get that at the end where Jason shows up and he's chasing his sister, but then you realize there's a method to why he was doing what he was doing. And I just like, that's different. You know what I mean? This is a kid, and he's taking on this killer guy, and he thought of this plan to shave his head to kind of look like Jason to distract him. And
my only criticism with that, and it's not something I noticed until I was older, but when Tommy comes downstairs, he's got the shaved head, he's got some like dark circles under his eyes, so he kind of made himself look like the Jason from the artist rendering from the newspaper clipping that he found from Rob. But he's also wearing like a gray polo shirt and sneakers with no socks. I don't think Jason was wearing that when he was drowning. I think if Jason looked up the stairs, he'd be like, oh, there's just some little bald kid I have to hack up next. Wait, that's not me.
Get the cancer kid.
Wow.
Jason said it, not me.
It's totally Jason. I heard him completely.
Honestly, I was hoping in one version of the script there was like a montage of him, like while his sister's fighting Jason, he's like, I got to quickly make a mask. I was hoping there's going to be like an epic pouring montage and him like opening up the mask and realize, oh man, I didn't do a good job. I got to do another one because I got to get rid of these seams. Oh, I don't got time to paint this.
That'd be a great fan film. You splice together the actual scenes of Kimberly Beck fighting Jason, and then just like get a Tommy lookalike to do this mask scene. Draw it out for like 20 minutes.
It's like a whole episode of that TV show Face Off, which is him making a Jason.
And Trish is just continuously running around at the bottom of the house, avoiding Jason constantly.
It's unrelated to anything we talk about. Can I tell you like one of my favorite comedy beats in this entire movie?
Yeah, no, go for
It's
it.
near the end of the film when Jason's chasing the sister and Tommy back in the house, and Jason just fucking wheels his way through the door.
I was just gonna talk about that, like the exploding through the door. Like I
Like,
still
I
don't
love
understand
anytime
that.
a horror villain just walks like in Halloween 2, Michael's just walking like stoically and just like and just walks into the glass door and it shatters. But this where he like slams through it and it looks like he almost trips and then has to make himself look cool, kind of like when your dog does something stupid and then just has to like recompose himself. Like that's how that felt. And every time I watch it, it's just so hysterically funny.
Oh no, it's great. I caught that too, and you know it. But the thing is, it still didn't take away from the scene or his
No.
character at all. It kind of was like, you know, whenever I see something like that, I always remember from Ed Wood. It's like, don't you think we should shoot that again? Looks like the big guy had a little trouble opening the door. Well, in real life, some of his stature would have problems opening that door. So
It's realism.
it's realism.
Like and that's ultimately what I appreciate about Ted White is like he's reacting to things in you know, one could argue, is it the way that Jason would react? Who knows? Because everyone's played Jason differently, but he's reacting like a human being and not just a robot. So like even like when the sister comes at him with the machete and almost gets him and she gets the door frame instead, like he reacts because he almost gets hit. So like there's little things like that, or like, you know, the fact that, you know, like Jason's like rolling around and wrestling people and shit. Like it's he's actually moving. He's not just, you know, a stunt man who doesn't know how to perform.
He does perform because that same attack as he comes through the door, she's swinging at him with the axe, and he's like has his hands up and kind of moving like, I actually don't want to get hit with the machete.
Yeah.
And then he gets hit in the hand with it, you know, and it cuts his hand, and he kind of reacts. He's like, bitch just fucked my hand up. What the hell? He's like, oh, that's it.
Well, this is because this is arguably when Jason was still a human being. I mean, you could say that he'd been hung and stabbed and all that stuff, but you could still kind of make the case that he's technically still alive. I think it was in part 5 he wasn't actually there except in Tommy's dreams, and then in part 6 he's brought back, you know, to life through lightning. And I think that's the very different Jason we see from 6 on through the rest of the movies, because there's nothing human about him in those later sequels. In parts 1 through 4, he's arguably still just this, you know, he's crazy and he's like a woodland creature, but he's still, you know, got human motivations and human reactions.
Yeah, he does. And in this one, he still does it. And well, and then people will say, well, he got a, you know, machete to the head. And I'm like, well, I could see them playing it off, but he was deformed. So where he got hit could have been
they didn't hit an artery or anything.
You know, they didn't actually either get into the brain pan or, you know, they hit scar tissue, you know, or whatever. I mean, they could at least set it up to where if you thought about it for a beat, you go get enough plausible to where you're like, yeah, okay. You know, because
he's also wearing the mask.
The brain's
so the mask
here.
Might have...
He got hit here. That's just tissue. That's
that's just tissue. Yeah, the mask slowed it down, so it only cut it. It was mostly stuck into the.
If that mask can stop a hockey puck, it can probably stop a machete.
Oh yeah, there you go. See,
I'd buy it. I'd buy that for $1.
It's a whole nother movie. You know, and it's one of those things where some people go, I've seen some criticisms like that, you know, with all these sequels and that, you know, Friday the 13th and Jason, well, how they keep bringing them back. And even as a horror fan, I'm like, you give me just a little morsel of where I could go, yeah, I could see that. That's enough for me because I want to move on now and see this character in action again. That's just like with Friday the 13th part 4. It's like, yes, he got a machete to the head, but if they came up with any explanation at all of, well, maybe, you know, some doctor, some exposition or something, you know, you'd get at least enough morsel to go, okay. Or in this case, you just get the look of him being deformed, which is like the first time we've seen him without the mask since he was the kid coming out of
we saw him in
we see him in every single one.
Oh, that's right. Okay. But he's got the deformed
different and
he looks it looks different.
Honestly, I always used to say, like, I always wanted the challenge of writing a late entry Friday the 13th film, and not where it's like a reboot or a remake. Like I always liked the idea of being written into a corner because of everything that came before me, and just trying to figure out how do I get out of that corner. Because like, yeah, it's very easy for someone to just be like, oh, I'm just gonna ignore these other movies and just write what I want to write. I wanted to make a sequel that tries to tie in all the films and see if I can write a story and write myself out of that corner. Like I would just like, because one thing I always appreciate about this franchise, no matter which film, the film that comes next always tries to pick up where the last one ended. So it's like I just want to like someone give me something like that and like have me figure it out. Like I'm sure I would pull my hair out and kind of hate it, but it seems like it'd be a fun challenge. Like screenwriter and director Larry Cohen used to say that he used to intentionally write himself into corners, so he had to find a creative way to get out of it.
Yeah, and he would like slip out of it on a big wave of the stuff.
Yeah.
But no, I write that movie. I mean, the Friday the 13th has been in limbo for well over a decade because of the legal.
I don't want to piss off Victor Miller.
No. Well, I don't know if you could. I mean, he's very nice. But that's the thing is like I think they're going to have to come to some kind of an agreement because they had the results of the case. So because I think it's like he's got the rights to like Jason, the essentially the Friday the 13th Part 1 iteration. But then Cunningham has the rights to like international distribution or something. So they can't really make a Friday the 13th movie and have it make any money like on their own. But yeah, I'd say write that sequel and, just let everyone know, hey, I've got this sequel. It's going to be amazing. And maybe you'll get a knock on the door. I'd like to read it.
Yeah, I'd read it. Heck, yeah.
So the big question is, do I pick up after Jason Goes to Hell, where it's, in reality, do I pick up after Jason X and figure out where his body landed, or do I pick up after Freddy versus Jason? Who knows? Or do I write a sequel to the remake and that also tie it into all the previous?
Well, the remake was like 1 through 3 retelling, so
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, that was a reboot. I would honestly start with after Jason Takes Manhattan. Just forget all the New Line shit or whatever, and just stick with the Paramount lore.
I often joke. I know it's not Friday the 13th Part 4. I often joked last time I watched Jason Takes Manhattan, be like, man, the production designer of this film, they owe Lloyd Kaufman some money because their version of New York is fucking Tromaville. There's just bubbling things of nuclear waste just sitting around and bums picking fights of people and shit, and they owe Lloyd Kaufman some money.
I think Jason Takes Manhattan, and we could talk about the others because it's hard not to when you talk about one of these franchise films. I think for me, it was just such a weird departure for me that I was just like, I didn't get it. I haven't revisited recently, but thinking back on the film, I'm like, okay, maybe I could see what they were trying to go for. The only favorite scene and only really good scene that I enjoyed out of that entire movie is when he's in Times Square, and the guys come up to jump him, and he just lifts. We don't see the face. We see the shot from behind where he lifts the mask, and they're just like, oh shit. they don't end up mugging him because it's like,
I love when he kicks the boombox.
Yeah.
When he kicks the what?
The boombox.
Oh, yeah. To that point, Mark, I wish they had just not shown his face because the makeup, that was the worst Jason face I'd ever seen.
Yeah.
At the end when they finally reveal it.
Yeah.
Oh, my God.
I still think the craziest thing about is Jason Takes Manhattan is the opening monologue of the film. They have
the DJ, the late night DJ guy.
Yep, I just posted it the other day. I shared it from something because I apparently shared it in 2014. It's one of my memories. And yeah, it has it's no character. It feels kind of like a Leonard Cohen song. And I have it here, so I'm just gonna recite it. It's like this. We live in claustrophobia, the land of steel and concrete, trapped by dark waters. There is no escape, nor do we want it. We come to thrive on it and each other. You can't get the adrenaline pumping without the terror, good people. I love this town. Like, wow. Fuck, that opens a Friday the 13th film? That's like a Leonard Cohen song.
Right, but the song that's played under it is the Darkest Side of the Night, which is one of those great off-brand cheesy 80s anthems. I love that song. Show some respect,
It's
try
not
to
as good.
survive.
My favorite song from this entire franchise is the song that the girls dance to in part 5. Oh, it's like
Oh yeah,
what is it called? It's like Killer's Eyes or something like
Mhm.
that. It's just like this kind of like cheesy late era new wave song. Fucking fantastic.
Speaking of music, how does Crispin Glover dance like he did and not just bust out laughing or anyone else on the set?
So
Because
Crispin Glover is the
wow.
perfect example of a pro wrestling heel, where the whole point, the whole trick of being a pro wrestling heel is you need to believe what you're doing is true and is right. And
Yeah.
I don't think that man has a shred of irony in his body, or
Mhm.
I don't think he realizes that is a goofy dance.
well, no, because Joe Zito was talking about this on the commentary track. That dance was just how apparently he danced at clubs when he would go out and hang out and party. It was like, okay, here's where you dance, and he just did his thing. There was no like, oh, let me work this out. The other thing that's weird, talking about these kind of extended death scenes, like the uncensored versions, when you see the meat cleaver to the face, they do a couple of different takes and they do it in kind of like a reverse thing. But you see his reaction, and he's moving his face and contorting his body as if he was actually getting stabbed in the face. It's very upsetting to watch. Like the very quick cut we get in the movie is mercifully short. The real thing went on for minutes on end. I was like, I can't turn away, but I really want to.
So there's basically like a RoboCop Criterion Collection version of this film where they just have longer extended scenes of the death.
Honestly,
Well,
that sounds great to me.
Yeah.
I mean, you can probably find it on YouTube, including I don't know if you guys have seen from part 2 the elusive double spearing in the bed.
Yep,
Have you seen the full version of that shot?
I do
With
believe
where
so.
you actually where you see the spear go through the back and all that stuff?
Mhm.
Man, I watched that, and it's like I think it's because it's not like it hasn't been timed or cleaned up or anything. It's still that kind of raw footage and there's no sound. It just makes it even more like eerie to watch. But yeah, it's gross.
So on the commentary, did they talk at all about what Crispin Glover was like on this film? I only asked because I remember hearing somewhat recently that Robert Zemeckis had a lot of trouble with Crispin Glover on Back to the Future, where he was just difficult to work with. Like they'd give him his blocking and he would completely ignore it, and they'd be like, "Crispin, what are you doing?" He's like, "Well, I think my character would come over here." And they're like, no, your character would go over there. It's like, well, I think my character would do this, to the point where the story has it they had to, during some scenes, actually had to put a little fence around him so he couldn't move outside of his box because he was constantly all over the place and walking off camera. So I'm just curious if he was that annoying, on his second role, or
They didn't really get into it. Most of it was just fawning over like, this is kind of an early performance, and I can't believe that he would go on to become who he was. But yeah, wow.
And we've talked about.
I guess. Well, sorry, Mike.
No,
I can understand the Back to the Future thing because that was like the movie he did after Friday the 13th Part 4. So maybe he got the big head on this movie, so that he thought that he could do whatever he wanted on Back to the Future. He's like, "Fuck you, Zemeckis. I've worked with Joe Zito."
I want that on a T-shirt. Fuck you, Robert Zemeckis. I worked with Joe Zito.
That is such a T-shirt. That is definitely a T-shirt idea.
I'd buy that off of you for $1.
For $1. Oh,
come on, Mark. We got to get some merch for the show.
I've got a Teespring site, so maybe we could try to work things out. But we mentioned all the deaths in here. This is Tom Savini at his finest in it. All the makeup and gore effects in this are just
honestly.
wow.
There's only one other movie that I would maybe put above this for his gore effects, but I think this one still might beat it. And the only other one I would probably maybe put above this is Maniac. But this is like, I don't know how much longer he was still doing makeup after this, because I feel like Tom Savini had and correct me if I'm wrong, it almost feels like a flash in the pan career where he did a lot of films in a short amount of time, and then I just feel like he wasn't doing makeup as much anymore and started doing, like, he wanted to direct and act, but because I feel like his major body of work felt really short. I'm looking him up now because I don't remember.
It's hard to say. Well, I mean, he moved up to where he was, not doing he wasn't the main guy making the stuff. He was supervising people to make the stuff for that too. So, but just all the makeup effects in here for 84 horror film look really good. Just, I mean, and they're on screen. It's like Zito understood the artist he had as well, because we get to see some of these kills and the makeup effects full frame. It doesn't like put it in focus kind of in the back or whatever. We get these full frame machetes to the head and all of these brutal kills. Or the first one we get, the hacksaw to the neck. I mean, it's only not that long of frames, but holy crap.
It almost feels like this is his thesis statement, everything that he's learned building up to this. Because I know Tom Savini jokes around about like when he did the first Friday the 13th and said, because he had done a couple, like he said that was kind of like a couple summers worth of just packing up his shit. It was probably before he had like an official studio. And just like kind of packing up his shit and just going town to town and shoot to shoot and just, he said killing teenagers because like he did Martin, he did Dawn of the Dead, he did The Prowler, he did this, and he did Maniac somewhere in there as well. And I just feel like
The Burning as well.
Yes, he did The Burning. And I just feel like he took everything he learned on doing these other films, and granted he did stuff after this as well, and just kind of like put it all into this, because I'm looking at his makeup filmography, and maybe other than Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, which he did after this, like I can't think. He's done other movies. I can't think of one that's been nearly as good makeup wise as this film. So this kind of felt like his climax, his thesis statement, and be like, I'll show you everything I can do.
I'll show you everything that I like that I could do in special effects, and it shows in here, and it makes for a solid film. I can see why this is a favorite for a lot of people's.
Who would have thought the fourth movie in any franchise could arguably be the best?
Right, but it is, in all honesty, it's like they learned from the others, and yeah, they they just threw it all in here as if it was going to be the final one, and then they move on to maybe Tommy being the killer, which crazy Corey Feldman, before he was crazy Corey Feldman,
no, he was crazy Corey Feldman, we just didn't know that yet.
Yeah, that's true. For a kid actor in a movie like this, I thought he did well, but by here he had a lot of experience by then. I mean, he had been a lot of work. It's insane how much work he got as a kid, but I'll say for a kid actor, he does quite well in a horror film where the kid is usually annoying as fuck.
Yeah, I mean, he was really good. And something that, we were talking about the family dynamic earlier. It's weird because I'm not sure exactly how close this place was to the original Crystal Lake or whatever, but the family knows about the murders because Tommy makes a casual jokey remark about like leaving the door open in case some psycho wanders in, or like lock the door in case the psycho wanders in. Like, so they're aware that there have been mass killings in the area, but like the mom isn't like, each of you kids is going to have a gun and we're going to have 3 padlocks on the door and you're not leaving my sight. It was just, maybe she was so torn up over the divorce, she just didn't care. Or
she saw the news and like, he's been killed.
He's been killed, yeah.
But if she'd been watching the news, that same report had been on at least like 2 or 3 times in the last week.
She saw that the killer was taken, and she's like, I'm done with the news forever. Click.
Was she our only off-screen kill?
No.
I mean, you had the silhouette in the aftermath, but we don't know what happened to her.
There was... no, in part 2, there was...
She was killed by a bear.
She was
killed by the bear that the one guy was hunting.
By the hunter who failed to get because he was too busy hunting Jason. He forgot to get the bear. That's how this movie
should have ended. Jason versus that bear.
Wow. But
Which
no,
reminds me now of the film that I just watched before we came on here. The people was it that forgot or whatever. They have a guy in a bear suit who's posing as a bear fighting someone. You can tell it's someone in a bear suit fighting someone. It's so.
they
Now I
could make
wanna
a
see
documentary about the making of that movie called "The People Under the Bears."
Oh,
Sorry.
That's just the best joke I've heard all night.
And I think on that
Sorry.
we're gonna wrap it up here.
That's the best place to end.
That is a good place to end. I think we'll just go around really quick. Get your final thought with the final chapter. Michael, go first. Your final thought with this recommendation, what you feel. Just go ahead.
Final thought is, as I said before, I think this is, if anyone's following me on Letterboxd, this is definitely for me a 5-star film. It's a 5-star slasher film, Friday the 13th film. And once again, I'm going off of, for those who tuned in late, the Roger Ebert school of thinking where, when you rate a film, you kind of need to judge each film on its own merit and put each film on its own scale. Because I feel like it's very, I don't think it's a very smart idea to take a film and be like, this is the greatest film ever made, and then judge everything else based on that film. Each thing needs to kind of be in its own vacuum, in its own bubble. And if I'm thinking about the oeuvre of slasher films, which, I'm also in the camp where even bad slasher films are great slasher films, just because they're a lot of fun. Even the really terrible ones, this is probably like the gold standard for a slasher film. And I'm sure there might be better ones, and I might even say put The Burning in the same category, but it's really hard to beat this film, and that comes down to Joseph Zito. And I don't think if Steve Miner would have come back for a third film, if they could have had the same script, they could have had everything. I don't think this film would have been as good with Steve Miner. And I like Steve Miner, and I like his direction, though I think Joseph Zito brought something unique to this.
Ian, any final thought with this film?
No, I mean that's I second everything Michael has said. I do love this movie. It's kind of hard because I've seen it so many times over the last almost 40 years that it's kind of like Star Wars. I can almost not evaluate it anymore. I talked about it a couple of years ago. I did a series like all year. We did 12 because at that point. And still, there were 12 Friday the 13th movies, so we did one every year. We called it Friday, one every month. It was Friday the 40th for the 40th anniversary, and it's fun to revisit all of them. But yeah, I don't have any distance from these movies.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to talk about. It's same thing even with with a lot of these films. But I feel the same way about the first film. It's really hard for me to be critical on it because it's a movie that means a lot to me, and it's a movie that I've seen a lot. And, I'm sure we all have movies that not saying this is a bad movie, but, you see a bad movie that you love enough times, you start seeing it as being a bad movie. So it's hard for me to really give an unbiased opinion of this film other than it's fucking killer.
Yeah. Well, it's like you're saying, judging this not against other movies, but against other, slasher films. I think it is almost uncritiquable. If you're going to start attacking Friday the 13th, the final chapter, you have to start attacking the genre.
Yeah. You're comparing this to Memorial Valley Massacre or some other shitty slasher film. You're not comparing this to Yojimbo or Citizen Kane because it wouldn't compare.
Actually, I have Memorial Day Massacre on VHS somewhere in my collection.
It's terrible.
It's horrible.
Fucking terrible.
It is so not good. No, I agree with you guys. It just is on its own, it's a solid slasher film. I mean, it's even one of those two where, as we mentioned at the beginning of this, the opening of this, you didn't have to see the other ones. They give you a fairly good summary in that opening. To where you could at least understand enough.
I'd even argue that this film is better not having watched the ones that came before. Obviously you've seen them, but I think this one's almost better just watching on its own as instead as part of a massive rewatch. Because I think sometimes when you rewatch a franchise, especially if you watch in a quick succession, what a film is doing well could actually be lost on you. Whereas if you just kind of put, a random entry to a franchise on, you can maybe judge it a little more freshly than comparing it to everything that came before.
Yeah.
Agreed. Absolutely. And Ian, we have another link to last year's film of Missing in Action with Mr. Joseph Zito, because we covered Missing in Action last year, and now we have his
Joe
other
Zito
film.
directed it.
He directed.
That's what's missing. We need Chuck Norris versus Jason.
He also directed Invasion USA.
Yes, he did.
It's funny. He made like two horror films. Well, I haven't seen his entire filmography, but he made like, two great horror films, and then did a shit ton of not a shit ton, but the rest of his career is all action films.
Yeah.
And an Alice Cooper music video.
And we just have to give a shout out to a wonderful cameo in Friday the 13th Part 4, the home version of Zaxxon. Okay, there we go. Because I played so much Zaxxon when I was a kid, the stand-up in arcade.
That's what that game was. Okay.
That's what that game was Zaxxon. What even more importantly, though, they name it correctly in the film. His sister Trisha actually says, you played too much Zaxxon, and I was like, they even called it by its name. So
did you ever get 9,000?
No, I know.
How many robots is that, Mark?
That's there. Okay, that part they got wrong, but at least they got the name right. Right? Okay, we're gonna do best out of 3 trivia here, and whoever wins gets to do the license to shill first. So, Mike, since you are here, sir, and you're in the upper right, we'll give you to your first action movie, Oscar or comedy classics.
Let's go action movie. I don't know.
Action movies. All right, action movies.
My blind spot. I don't know why I chose it, but let's do it.
Let's do this. Let's see what we have here in action movies. All right, now pick
Schwarzenegger.
Pick number 1 or number 2.
Let's go number 2.
Number 2. Oh, come on. Okay, which actor starred as the title character in Machete?
Danny Trejo.
Yeah, that's like
Machete. Don't text.
Machete apparently doesn't write challenging trivia questions either. Okay, Ian, Oscar winners, comedy or action?
Comedy. The answer is Freddy Got Fingered.
I knew you were going to say that. God damn it.
Wouldn't it be great if the answer to the question
all right,
was
one or two. Oh, we did this one already. Never mind. You're not doing that one.
What game is this, Mark?
This is just some game. My wife, the big movie quiz my wife got me for Christmas, and I am putting it to use. So I hope my listeners don't mind. Okay, pick 1 or 2 there. Ian. 2. Which movie is set in wine country in Santa Barbara County and stars Paul Giamatti?
Sideways.
The minute
I was going to say it at wine country, but I didn't want to be an asshole.
The minute
I had it at wine country too.
I was going to say the minute it said wine country, I'm like, come on. Let's come on.
Under the Tuscan sun.
Under the Tuscan sun. What is it? The Walk in the Wind or whatever, the Keanu wine. Never mind. Go ahead, Mike. Oscars, comedy, or action? What do you want?
I'm gonna probably regret this, but let's go Oscars.
Ooh, Oscars. All right. This has been kind of a equalizer when we've done this before. So,
AKA a Denzel Washington.
Number 1 or number 2?
Let's go 1.
1. Saving Private Ryan lost Best Picture to which movie in the 1999 Academy Awards?
Oh, come on.
Fuck, I don't know.
See, this is the one that everybody's like, yeah, I'll take. Oh, shit. Fuck.
Was it? I don't know. I'm not even.
All right. We'll give it to Ian. Ian, same question to you.
Shakespeare in Love.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. All right. So he is one.
I thought it was Saving Ryan's Privates.
Saving right. No, that was a different.
That was the AVN Awards for that year.
That was the. I was going to say that was the AVN.
That
was
Golden
before,
Woody goes to.
That was before Axel Braun was big, so other people were making parodies. Anyway,
and it actually lost to Shakespeare and Muff.
Yeah.
Anyway.
This is the second time I've been on your show that I brought up porn parodies, because the last time I brought up my own the one I wanted to write.
That's right, you did. So we're doing really well here with porn parodies.
And actually, on my own show, I just talked about Boogie Nights. We talked about porn a lot.
That was a great episode, actually.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And Ian, since you did win the trivia standoff, you go, sir. License to shill, please. Shill away.
I am Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. And also, if you go to YouTube, you can see the Kicking the Seat YouTube channel. Do multiple shows a week, everything from roundtables to interviews to movie reviews. And on Wednesdays, we're usually talking about whatever Disney Plus / Marvel / Star Wars show is on. So this last couple months, we've been talking about the Book of Boba Fett.
They only talk about Mandalorian.
Can we talk about the Book of Boba Tea instead? The Book of Boba Tea.
Boba
Tea.
Yeah.
Is that like bubble tea?
Yeah, it's like those little.
Oh, I love those things. I would rather drink that than talk about the Book of Boba Fett. But we only have 2 more episodes to get through. So yeah, join us live 8:30 p.m. Central on Wednesdays. We'd love to have you. And that's my shill.
And that's his shill. Michael, please shill your stuff.
So my name is Michael. I run a podcast called The Shameless Picture Show, which I had made into a hat. Actually,
Awesome
my co-host Nick got this for me as a Christmas gift.
Fantastic.
My wife made the logo.
Nice.
You can find us at shamelesspictureshow.com. We're also on pretty much every streaming platform, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, pretty much everywhere. We originally a bi-weekly podcast, but we've kind of become twice a month type of deal, just because schedules are hard are hard to deal with, but you can still get plenty of goodness from our show. We also have Patreon, which I update every month, and I followed the Mark the Movie Man route and hit up TikTok, which is where I'm now doing my physical media reviews. So if you like to hear reviews from everything from Arrow Video, Vinegar Syndrome, Mill Creek Entertainment, Blue Underground, everyone pretty much but Criterion and Scream Factory, that's where you can find it. Shameless Picture Show. We're on also on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter.
There you have it, folks. They are everywhere. Please check out both these fine gentlemen's fine work. And thank you so much for listening. Thank you to our live audience, which we got up to 4 viewers at one point. Thank you.
No comments. I didn't see any comments.
Yeah, there were some comments, not too much.
Oh, I was in the private chat one. That's
there were a few comments, but mostly they were just listening to us wax nostalgia about Friday the 13th 4, and we are putting a bookend on it. But prepare yourselves, folks, for Deaduary. Yes, next month's theme is Deaduary, where we have films with the word dead in them, but not Night of the Living. Haha! So that was my challenge, which, trust me, actually was fairly easy. But
yeah. And
wait, on that note, has anyone ever made like a horror comedy just called Night of the Living?
I started writing one when I was in high school called Life of the Living Dead. It was before Romero did Diary of the Dead. I was going to do a mockumentary film crew following a group of zombies. Almost nice. like a nature documentary.
Oh, that'd be interesting.
It's called Life of the Living Dead.
You could still
I would watch the hell out of that.
I would too. Shoot it and we'll watch it and have you. Will you show it or what?
And I'll tell you what I told you before we went on air, Mark. You just tell me what episode you want me on, and I'll try to make it.
Well, I appreciate that. Appreciate everyone who tunes in and listens to our show. And look forward to Deaduary, where we got some very interesting choices coming up. So thank you so much. And I would just say a good night, everyone.
Good night.